Good morning everyone and welcome back to our geography class. In my yesterday's offline class also, I have already started this chapter, that is chapter number 12, that is your composition and your structure of your atmosphere. And we are basically dealing with the structure of an atmosphere where we highlighted the different layers that are present there in the atmosphere. We highlighted the characteristics of the troposphere, which was basically been followed by your stratosphere, your mesosphere and your thermosphere, which is again subdivided into your ionosphere and your exosphere. Now in my today's lesson and my today's class, I'm going to talk about this topic, that is your ozone and its depletion. As we all know, your presence of ozone layer there in the atmosphere makes your Earth an example of a unique planet. And because of your presence of your ozone layer only, that is also one feature, along with the presence of your oxygen, along with the presence of your water, along with the presence of your lithosphere, which is allowing different forms of life to sustain here in the Earth. So one important aspect of your atmosphere is the presence of your ozone. See, ozone layer is considered to be a protective shield, okay, which is not allowing your harmful UV rays to enter the Earth, and that is one primary reason as to why your life is sustaining here in the Earth. So in this topic, we are going to talk about your ozone layer, okay, which layer is your ozone present. We'll be dealing with that as well, and we'll also highlight your different activities which are taking place in your Earth, okay, that are responsible for creating a hole there in the ozone layer, or the factors that are responsible for depleting the ozone layer. They are your human activities, at the same time your natural activities that is taking place on a natural level, that is also responsible for depleting your ozone layer. So you can turn to page number 95 there in the textbook, ozone and its depletion. See, what is ozone? Ozone is actually a form of oxygen. Its presence is rare amounts in the Earth's atmosphere. Approximately, they say, one molecule out of every 2 million present in the atmosphere is the ozone. So you can basically come to the conclusion how small quantity of your ozone is present there in the atmosphere. So ozone is also one form of your oxygen, and as we all know, oxygen is considered to be very important in order to sustain your different forms of life here in the Earth. Now in the troposphere, we have already highlighted under the structure of the atmosphere the detailed study about the troposphere. Then we also highlighted about the stratosphere. So we should be noting down as to in which layer your ozone is present. So in the troposphere, ozone is generated in small amounts. That means in your troposphere also you have ozone, but in very less quantity, very less amount. But in your stratosphere, that means the other layer above your troposphere is your stratosphere. Your 20 to 50 kilometers above the sea level in your stratosphere, your ozone is present in significant amount. So they can ask you a short type question. Name the layer there in the structure of the atmosphere where your ozone is present. So ozone layer lies within the stratosphere. So ozone is generally found between your 20 to 50 kilometers above the sea level there in your stratosphere. So that is a very important short type question. Then they say in the stratosphere it is produced. Now why in the stratosphere your ozone is found in larger quantity? So in your stratosphere, it is basically been produced by the action of high energy radiation that is produced by your sun striking some molecules of your oxygen and then converting that into your ozone. So this is one primary reason as to why in your stratosphere, a sufficient amount of your ozone is present. So automatically your high energy radiation that is produced by your sun strikes one molecule of your oxygen and leads to your creation of your ozone. So this is also one primary give reasoning type question that they can ask you under the category of your ozone layer. Why in your stratosphere? See, stratosphere is the layer where your ozone is found in significant amount. Now why in your stratosphere more? It is basically because of this reason. They say, but the ozone decreases by the sunlight acting on the number of pollutants that is there in the air. Now in the air, you just don't have your oxygen. You have different varieties of your pollutants that are there in the air, and your natural pollutants are also present, and on top of that, your reckless human activity which are responsible for creating different varieties of your air pollutants. Okay, concentration of your air pollutants there in the atmosphere is playing a primary role in order to decrease the production of your ozone. Now these pollutants, I told you man-made, especially your reckless or your careless activity that are engaged by your human beings, that are responsible for depleting your ozone layer. Okay, and the pollutants here are emitted by your jet aircraft, that is created by human beings, by the hydrocarbons that are produced from your automobile exhaust. So you can take into account, nowadays we talk about the process of urbanization, where your different modes of transportation are thriving. Again, your roads, you can see your different varieties of your roadways, modes of transportation, and different means are utilized. So when an automobile or your different means of transportation that is utilized on a roadways, modes of transportation are thriving, they are responsible for creating your different varieties of your air exhaust, because they are consuming a mineral oil, they are consuming diesel, they are consuming petroleum, and when you're burning diesel, when you're burning kerosene and all, you are responsible for creating your hydrocarbons, which is an example of an air pollutant which is responsible for decreasing your creation of your ozone. The concentration of the ozone in the upper atmosphere is comparatively very protective. Because of that, your ozone is sometimes referred to as your protective shield. Okay, shield is basically been used by a warrior in order to protect himself from the attack of his counterpart. Similarly, this ozone in the uppermost atmosphere is playing a primary role, acting as a shield. Okay, acting as a shield as it is absorbing the heat of the UV rays that is coming out from the sun. So it is not allowing, why it is acting as a protective shield? How it is acting as a protective shield? It is not allowing a harmful UV rays to enter the earth. The ozone layer in the stratosphere also protects the earth and its biosphere from your extra heat. Biosphere is that realm where your hydrosphere, lithosphere and the atmosphere is meeting, and that layer is sustaining your different forms of life. So your life here in the biosphere is also surviving, it is also thriving, and here the credit ought to be given to your stratosphere, because in your stratosphere you can see your ozone layer is lying. But there is a danger of its depletion through harmful gases and your increase in the level of the carbon dioxide in the lower atmosphere. So carbon dioxide is an example of a greenhouse gas that is responsible for depleting the ozone layer. So ozone layer is very, very important. But in spite of its importance also, there are so many activities that are taking place here in the earth which are responsible for depleting or exhausting the ozone layer. Now next one, ozone layer and its depletion, or your depletion of an ozone layer. And here you ought to be aware about this term, that is your ozone. You should be noting down the definition of ozone hole. So what is ozone hole? So ozone hole is an ozone depleted area. See, ozone layer you already have. So an area, because of different varieties of an activities which are responsible for making a hole there in the ozone layer where your ozone is basically been depleted. So an area where your ozone is depleted, or an ozone depleted area, that is termed as your ozone hole. They say it was detected to satellite imageries, the images that are sent by your satellites conducted by your NASA in United States of America. Subsequently, many scientific research has been going on since then, and annual data is being maintained, and the efforts by almost every country are being made to reduce the breaking down of the ozone molecules. Many chemicals, now these are your chemicals which are responsible. So many surveys, so many research were basically been conducted in order to find out, and the research were basically been done by NASA there in United States of America in order to find out what are your factors, what are your causes which are actually responsible for depleting your ozone layer, or the factors responsible for creating your ozone hole. So many chemicals, they have named the chemicals here, chemicals like your chlorine, your chemicals like your bromine are banned because they are your chemicals which are responsible for depleting your ozone layer. Two examples, chlorine and your bromine. They are banned. Why they are banned? Because they are responsible for creating your ozone hole. They are responsible for depleting your ozone layer. Apart from that, they say CFCs, also termed as your chlorofluorocarbons, underline that, are also regarded as a reason for your depletion of ozone layer near your Antarctica region. So different regions has got different chemicals playing a primary role in order to deplete your ozone layer. So near your Antarctica, your ozone hole is basically being created, and it is basically because of your creation of your chlorofluorocarbons or your CFCs. Now CFCs are basically being created by the use of their refrigerators, your aircrafts and your air conditioners. See, refrigerators and air conditioners, we human beings, for our comfort, we're using that on a regular basis. So when you're using refrigerators, when you're using your aircrafts, we are responsible for creating your CFCs, and that CFC is also one primary chemical that is responsible for depleting your ozone layer. CFC compounds escape into the atmosphere and finally break down your stratosphere where your ozone layer is present. They produce chlorine atoms which destroy the ozone layer. So CFC is also one primary factor responsible for creating your ozone layer. Apart from that, your natural activities like your volcanic eruption. So when a volcano is erupting, your solid particle is also coming out, your liquid particle is also coming out, your gaseous pollutants are also coming out. So when a volcano is erupting, okay, your particles that are coming out from your volcanoes are also responsible for ozone depletion. Let's see the examples. See, large eruption, they give out sulfur dioxide. Please underline that. That is your gaseous waste, okay, or your gaseous pollutants that oozes out on the surface of the earth when a volcano is erupting. Sulfur dioxide, SO2, which speed up the destructive chemical reaction. Tropospheric ozone increases especially in the northern hemisphere but is small in the localized there. Another reason for the destruction of the ozone layer discovered recently are your solar storms. So volcanic eruptions, solar storms, they all are your natural activity that are taking place that are responsible for depleting the ozone layer. Whereas your creation of your CFCs, whereas your creation of your different varieties of your auto exhaust like your carbon monoxide and all, they are your reckless human activities which are responsible for creating a substance that is bringing about your depletion of an ozone layer or responsible for creating your ozone hole. Okay, these solar storms consist of small coronal mass ejection and your solar flare is associated with explosion on the surface of the sun. So detailed manner, you do not note down that. Okay, just under your natural activities, note down volcanic eruption is leading to your production of sulfur dioxide, that is depleting your ozone layer. Another one is your solar storms, that is also responsible for depleting your ozone layer. The largest ozone hole was noticed. Now this is a recent example that you ought to cite. The largest ozone hole was noticed in the year 2000 in the month of September near Antarctica. And as already mentioned earlier in the previous example, CFCs, okay, chlorofluorocarbons, and its production is one primary factor responsible for creating a hole there in the Antarctica region. So they say the largest ozone hole is created there in the continent of Antarctica in the year 2000 in the month of September. The formation of the ozone hole has been attributed largely to the activities of man. That means human activity and their reckless, careless activity of creating your waste. Okay, that is responsible for creating that larger ozone hole that is there in the continent of Antarctica. Ozone depletion resulting in ozone hole is more common to Antarctica where the temperature are the lowest. Due to bitterly cold, this is the geographic scenario also, the climatic condition that is prevailing there in Antarctica that is allowing your ozone hole to widen there in that continent. Okay, so due to bitterly cold, so you have a very low temperature there in the continent of Antarctica. So due to that low temperature, the bitterly cold Antarctic winter and the stratospheric ice cloud produces or promotes the production of chemically active chlorine and your bromine. Thus, in turn, leads to your ozone destruction when the sunlight returns to your Antarctic spring. On the other hand, the Arctic atmosphere, though cold, does not get cold enough for the creation of your fully developed ozone hole. So they can ask you a question. The Arctic region is also having a very low temperature like your Antarctic region. One is there in the northern hemisphere, another one is there in the southern hemisphere. But why your ozone hole is expanding there in your Antarctic region? They have already highlighted that. It is basically due to your bitterly cold Antarctic winter and your stratospheric ice cloud that promotes the production of your chemical substances like your chlorine and your bromine. And your chlorine and your bromine are your two primary substances which are responsible for depleting your ozone layer. So these are your examples, okay, that you ought to highlight as to why and how your depletion of an ozone layer is taking place. So there are many examples. I've already given an example of your natural causes also. I've already given an example of your man-made causes also. So you should note down examples under each category in order to understand clearly your term, that is your ozone hole and your depletion of your ozone layer. Okay, so with this, we end this topic, that is ozone and its depletion. In our next class, we'll be dealing with our next topic, that is your global warming, and we'll also highlight your different effects of your global warming. So that will be the last topic here in this chapter. Thank you.